Greetings, salutations, Ryan here, setthepace.triathlon.com, and we're doing a quick little Facebook Live here this morning to talk about your running pace for non-target races. And what I mean by that is usually when we're doing triathlons, so going through Ironman races and stuff. Sometimes we got running races mixed in there, and some people are kind of like, well, what do? I go all out? What's my race pace? What's my race effort? What's my race level? All that kind of good stuff. So we're going to do some live tips, and because we're doing it live, I've got my dogs running around in the background. I've got chewing on bones. We got a puppy going on, so you may hear some barking in the background. So please excuse the background noise. But we're going to try the best we can to power through and get you some tips. This, like I said, just comes up in questions I've been asked from athletes and considerations of what I've done for my past races and stuff. You can see here in the photo in the background, this was a Hospital Hill half marathon. It was actually a week before Des Moines full Ironman. So I went from the half to the 10K because I didn't want to tax myself. And pardon the puppy in the background. I didn't want to wear myself out too much going into the race. And I also wanted to make sure that I did get something in. I still wanted to do the race. So I dropped down to the 10K, and it's pretty taxing race. I mean, the course is pretty hilly and stuff. So it's called the Hospital Hill Run. It's a very hilly course, especially for the half marathon portion. Like I said, it was a week before a full Ironman at Ironman Des Moines, and I did not want to go out and be sore, get myself sore, even if I ran this kind of a very easy effort or something like that. I didn't want to come through and get myself like super sore or anything like that, have any kind of recovery leading into Ironman Des Moines and kind of ruin the whole taper in the process. Especially I knew Des Moines was going to be probably a little bit tough because there was 4,600 feet of climbing on the bike course and runs pretty flat, but it was going to be pretty hot. So I'm going to be as rested and recovered as possible. So I dropped down to the 10K, but still had to pace it as such that I didn't go out there and try to kill myself. I definitely, wanted to have a brisk run, but I didn't want to go through it and try to get first my age group or anything like that. I didn't really have a time goal in mind. I just want to go out and do it with some energy and see how I did. I mean, and luckily I think I got third in my age group or something like that. So first my age group beat me by like 5 or 6 minutes. So I would have had to have ran pretty hard to get first my age group, but I was really concerned with that. It was just kind of a nice little perk that I did get an age group placing in the 10K distance. But getting back to the point of what we're talking about. So how do you pace yourself for these running races that are just kind of randomly maybe sprinkled into, like I said, this Hospital Hill? I've done it for 10 years or something like that. I've done it one for another, the half, 10K or 5K or something like that. And I just like to do it. It's a good spring event here in Kansas City. And we've got some other events like, the Kansas City Marathon is in October. This year I'm ditching it because I'm doing a Ironman Chattanooga, Ironman Florida, and I've been right in between, and I didn't really need a recovery from a marathon in there to kind of deal with. So sometimes you got to pull the plug on stuff. So I broke it down into two sections. If you're going into a running race, sometimes the schedule works out. It's like, hey, I want to go out and kill it. I want to get a PR. I want to do the best I can. So these points kind of hit that. This is kind of my approach. And this is more so running because, you don't have to deal with the swimming and the biking, and you just come in and you do your run. So the first few miles, I stay within myself. I usually line up with the pace group that is just under my goal. I have a tendency to go out maybe a little bit too easy at the beginning, and then I find myself behind and trying to catch up on pace throughout the entire run. But if your goal is 145 and you got a 140 group, maybe start with a 140 group or something like that and see if you can pace with them and stay up. It's always nice to find a pace group because usually the pacers are pretty good at staying on pace. So whereas maybe we have a tendency to go out a little bit hard at the beginning because we think, we feel really good and really fresh, and then we pay for it at the end. Had we gone with someone that paces out nice and evenly, maybe we'd have a little bit more at the end to see what can happen. So this is generally how I would recommend it. You line up with a pace group that's just under your goal, and I take that back. I set it in reverse. So if 145 is your goal, line up with the 150 group. So you're starting off intentional a little bit slower than what your pace normally is. Like I said, I do have a tendency sometimes going a little bit too easy. So at least if I line up with a pace group that's a little bit within that goal, it kind of assures me that I'm not going too easy and then have way too much time to make up. So that's where I line up. And then beginning, I find a good rhythm. It just depends on the distance. If you're doing a full marathon, half marathon, 10K, 5K, whatever you're doing. So I find a good rhythm where I'm comfortable in my pace. I'm warmed up. If it takes me a few miles to kind of really get my feet and get everything warmed up and find that groove. And then I bridge to my target pace group. So like I said, I try to find, usually most of our races, we got 5 minutes in between the pace groups. So usually if you're feeling good after the first 2 or 3 miles, you can kind of pick up the pace a little bit and then bridge up to your group that you're trying to pace with. So that shouldn't be too far out of reality. If you've been trained up and if you're training for 70.3, but you're going to do a full marathon a couple weeks out, you got to make sure that you're training properly for that marathon and not just for 70.3 and you go, oh, I don't think I'm good enough to do a marathon or something like that. This pace strategy won't work. So I find a pace group, bridge up to them, catch a pace group, and I pace with them as long as possible. Whatever, if it's a 145, it's a 130, 135, 120, whatever your pace is, stay with that group. I mean, if that's your goal, I'm going to do a 120 or a little bit sub, stay with that 120 group. Don't go out and find them and then try to pass them. Believe me, I tried that several times. You pass them, try to build up some steam down the road and just try to stay ahead of them the whole time. Usually I gas myself out about the middle of the run, and then they end up catching me, and sometimes they end up passing me because I just got nothing left to keep up. So don't run past your pace group and then try to keep on running at that pace, because you will run yourself into the ground. So I catch the pace group, pace with them for a while, and then 2 to 3 miles out from the finish line, or maybe it's a little bit less with a 10K, usually half marathon, I'm 2 to 3 miles out. If I feel pretty good, that's when I start picking up the pace to get to the finish line. Especially like Hospital Hill, it's nice because the last mile and a half is all downhill, so it's kind of an easier situation to pace a little bit harder than your pace group. But you got to be careful because sometimes they account for that too with their pacers. Just to be aware, it might affect ability to do harder workouts the next week. So that's the key. So if you're going to go out there and you want to get to a PR at 10K, half marathon, full marathon, whatever, you're going to pay for it. Even if it's a 5K, if you're out there trying to do like a sub 20 or something, you're going to be sore, you're going to be worn out. So if you're trying to do a PR, you better not be doing your A race the next week, a 70.3 or full Ironman or Olympic or anything, because you're more than likely going to be sore. You're more than likely going to be tired. If you're younger, it's a little bit easier to recover, but you're not going to be fully rested and ready for that next race. So you got to just be careful of how much time you got between your goal race and what you're doing there at your running race. Now, the flip side of this is if you're just running as a training run, kind of like what I was doing. I was not out there to set a PR. I was not out there to place my age group. I was just out there to kind of to run brisk, but not threshold. I didn't want to get in a threshold type of run situation. I didn't want to do it super easy and just be super lazy about it. So I was kind of in the middle ground. So I lined up with the pace group behind my race pace. And I say that for the 10K, they didn't have pacers, but for a half marathon. So say if your target was a 130 and that's going pretty hard, maybe 135, 140 is the pace group. You line up and you run, and they keep you a little bit challenged, but in the end, you're not going to be super sore after the run. This lining up with pace groups will keep you from ebbing and flowing. If you run low energy or feel good to go, butchering that. So if you run low energy or you're feeling super good or something like that, it'll keep you from going too hard and then paying for it later, or going too easy. So if you're like, you're just still poking around, that can actually be detrimental to your overall goal of your race day and stuff. If you go out, you do a very long, slow run, that can also take a toll on your system as well and just kind of drag you down. And as far as recovery goes, so you may not have sore muscles and everything, but your system is just kind of because you did zone 2 run for 2 hours or something like that, and it really was not what you were meant to do a week or 2 weeks out from race day. So I keep preaching, it's kind of a theme in this one. Find a pace group that's either above or below what you're looking for. If you're racing to set a PR, like I said, I start with a pace group that's maybe 5 minutes behind my goal, bridge up to my pace group about 2 or 3 miles in. And if I feel good 2 or 3 miles out, then that's why it's kind of turn on the burners and try to do anything I can to the finish line. If I'm getting my PR or something like that. Now, if you're running the train, like I said, I'd find a group that's about 5 to 10 minutes slower than your run pace. So it should kind of line up with your zone 2 runs. But you don't want to be super slow. You don't want to line up 15, 20 minutes slower than what your projected time is and just trudge through a half marathon or something like that. If your 145 is your comfort zone, maybe it's a 150 pace group. If 120 is your comfort zone, maybe it's a 130 pace group or something like that. So it's a pace group that's not going to overtax you, but it's also not a pace group that you're going to go slow as a snail and then end up paying on the other side of dragging out a run a lot longer than it should. Changes your run form, changes a lot of your mentality, changes a lot of things when you're going on a run that's super slower than what you're used to. So I thought I'd just go over that real quick tips. So I've had questions in the past, athletes always having other races on their calendars, which is not abnormal. Doing a run where you're doing a half marathon or a full marathon even, and you're training for a full Ironman. I'm not saying a full marathon is a prerequisite to doing a full Ironman, but some people do them. Got them on their calendar. They want to do them. It's no problem. You can make them work. You just got to keep in mind what your goal is. Is the PR that race, or is it in line with your training for your overall goal of finishing your Ironman or 70.3? So hopefully that helped you out. I didn't see any questions here on my other screen while I was doing this live chat. If you do have any questions, see it on Facebook, give it a thumbs up. You thought it was great. If you have any comments, put them in the comments section. Same with YouTube. Give it a like. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notifications button. See future videos that I post out about this or different race courses or venues or something like that. If you thought it was great, like I said, give it a like. If you thought it needed work, put it in the comment what you think. If you had any questions, put in the comments. I get notifications. Try to get back to all those. So hopefully this helps you out. And with that, I want to wrap it up so we don't drag it out too long. And I will see you guys out there on race.